WP, you're an old forgotten god. These days you're a withered old man, tending his garden in a small village. One day you hear it, a pleading whisper in your head, a prayer, the first one in over 3 millennia. Stunned, you listen. Please, mighty Kaheshen, they killed my parents, give me vengeance. The figs were growing nicely, he noticed with no small satisfaction. Soon they would be ripe. His small orchard was blossoming nicely. He moved, slowly, trying not to strain his back even more. Everyone knew Old Man Cash had lived in the village for a long time, but for how long, nobody knew. Rumors had it that he had been there since the founding stones were set. Others just remember him moving in at a hazy point in time. Truth was, Cash was living out his twilight years as all ancient forgotten gods do, doing small things that brought them pleasure without the worry of worship or petty squabbles of other humans and gods alike. The small spark of divinity sustaining him was fading fast, and that was all right with him. He made wine, fig wine to be precise, and it tasted divine, as he himself would chuckle whenever he sold a jug or two at the local market. Life was slow and peaceful. Until it wasn't. Sitting as he always did at the end of a day tending to his homestead and trees, he felt his hairs rise, and a pleading whisper slither into his head. No, it couldn't be, not now after all this time. A small voice echoed in his head with fearful clarity. Please, mighty Kaheshen, they killed my parents, give me vengeance. A prayer then, uttered and directed at him. Cash froze and fell to the ground in a painful heap. Words, they have power, and names, when used in the right context, unfathomably more. Kaheshen, the giver, Kaheshen, the tender of pain and longing, Kaheshen of the tearful remembrance, rose slowly, his spine righting itself, withered limbs bulking in size, snow-white hair changing to a graying auburn. He stretched his back, feeling vigor long forgotten surge beneath his skin. Where before was a withered old man with a bad back, now stood a strong and hale individual, maybe somewhere in the latter of his 5th decade, easily passing as a retired warrior. Shit, he said as he stared at his hands, free of any aging spots. It had been a good 3 millennia since someone directed a prayer at him, the civilization that once worshipped him long since fallen, remnants assimilated into new empires and cults. He'd worn many hats during his tenure as a god. Now it seemed a more wrathful aspect was needed. But still, how was this possible? He thought. Any traces of him were carefully and systematically erased from history, some even by his own hand, and here he was again, a semblance of his former self, a god. With his senses sharpened beyond anything human, he closed his eyes and listened again. And there it was again. Kaheshen, giver of retribution, give me my vengeance, and I will give you my life's blood. The smell of iron flooded his nose, and he winced as he realized that this was now a binding pledge. Another brief surge of power coursed through him, making him even younger and stronger. The graying hair disappeared and took on the appearance of a man in his physical prime, veins bulging beneath ripples of muscles. At best he could pass as his own grandson. Once this was all done, he thought. He could see it now in his head, a small twinkling star on the other side of the realm. He inhaled once and readied himself, willing himself to arrive at that spot. An instant later, he wobbled, and tripped on what looked to be a small overgrown altar. Cracked marble and faded symbols of power filled the grand temple. One of his own, perhaps? A few paces away, amongst many clay tablets, stood a raven-haired girl, no older than 9, her small fist bloodied, her eyes teary and determined. Vengeance burned in those small, amber eyes. A look he knew too well, unfortunately. Well met, little one, I am Kaheshen. Now then, what's all this vengeance about?